In the deepest silence of the night, when hope itself seemed to flicker like a dying flame, a nation waited. Israel was adrift, no king, no direction, and most terrifyingly, no voice from heaven. The scriptures tell us, in those days the word of the Lord was rare, there were not many visions. But in that suffocating silence, God was about to speak again, not through a mighty warrior, but through a child. That child was Samuel. He was a promise made flesh, offered to God by his mother, Hannah, whose desperate, barren tears had moved the very heart of heaven. Her pain became prophecy, her longing, the seed of Israel's renewal. Every night, young Samuel slept near the sacred Ark of the Covenant, completely unaware that destiny was about to call his name. While he slept, the world outside was crumbling. The priesthood had grown corrupt, the people had turned to idols, and their enemies, the Philistines, were sharpening their swords for another strike. It seemed as if God's chosen nation was rotting from the inside out. But even in that profound darkness, a single spark was forming, the kind of spark that ignites revolutions of faith. Then it happened. A whisper, soft as the wind, cut through the silence. "Samuel!" The boy awoke, thinking it was Eli, the old high priest. "Yes, master," he answered, rushing to his side. But Eli hadn't called. This happened again and again. 3 times the voice called. 3 times the boy obeyed. It was only then that the aging priest understood. The truth pierced the silence like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't a man calling the boy. It was God. The very air in the tabernacle seemed to tremble. Time itself felt suspended as Eli instructed the boy, "Go back and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" And with those simple, powerful words, the long silence of Israel was shattered. From that moment, Samuel became more than a servant. He became the bridge between heaven and earth, the prophet through whom God would reveal a hidden plan, a prophecy so profound it would rewrite the destiny of a nation forever. But before that grand revelation could rise, judgment had to fall. Because when God speaks, he also exposes the darkness. The very first prophecy Samuel ever heard wasn't a blessing. It was a curse against Eli and his own house. The same priest who had guided him would now hear from his lips that his lineage would be cut off for mocking the holiness of God. And so Samuel learned the first hard truth of a prophet's path. God's voice is not always gentle. Sometimes it burns. Years passed. Samuel grew in wisdom and stature, and his words carried the weight of heaven. It was said that not one of his prophecies ever fell to the ground unfulfilled. The people saw in him something ancient, something sacred, a man whose very presence carried divine fire. But as the prophet rose, the nation continued to fall. Israel's enemies advanced, and in a moment of sheer desperation, the priests treated the ark, that sacred symbol of God's presence, like a good luck charm. They carried it into battle, foolishly believing its power alone could save them. But God was not with them. Their sin had silenced his favor. The unthinkable happened. The Ark of the Covenant was captured. The symbol of God's glory was now in enemy hands. When the news reached Eli, the old priest fell backward from his chair and died. His daughter-in-law, in the agony of childbirth, named her newborn son Ichabod, crying out, "The glory has departed from Israel." The nation wept. Heaven was silent once more. But Samuel did not despair, because deep within him, a hidden prophecy was stirring, one that spoke not of final defeat, but of rebirth. He gathered the broken people at Mizpah, his voice thundering over the crowd. "If you are returning to the Lord with all your hearts," he cried, "then rid yourselves of your foreign gods and commit yourselves to him alone." And for the first time in decades, the people truly listened. They smashed their idols, fell to their knees, and cried out to the one true God. As they prayed, the Philistines saw their chance and attacked. But this time was different. This time, the battle wasn't theirs to fight. Samuel raised his hands to the sky, and heaven answered. Lightning split the clouds, and thunder rolled like the roar of divine judgment, scattering Israel's enemies in pure panic. To mark this miracle, the prophet took a stone and named it Ebenezer, declaring, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." Peace returned to the land. But peace is a fragile thing when human hearts forget. Soon the people made a demand that broke the prophet's heart more than any war. They wanted a king, a man to rule them, not God. Samuel knew this desire was a rejection of the highest order, and it would cost them dearly. Yet, in that very moment of rebellion, God whispered to him again. "Listen to them," the Lord said, "for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me as their king." And it was here that the hidden prophecy of Samuel truly began to unfold. It was a vision that foretold not just the rise of kings, but the long shadow of their downfall. From the sword of Saul to the harp of David, every victory and every failure was already written in the grand scroll of heaven. Decades rolled by. Samuel grew old, his hair silvered by the weight of the visions he carried. He had anointed Saul, Israel's first king, a man chosen by God but ultimately destroyed by his own pride. When the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, Samuel wept bitterly, feeling the curse of disobedience spread like a plague across the land. But one night, as the old prophet mourned, God spoke again with a new command. "Fill your horn with oil and go, for I have chosen another." That command led Samuel on a secret journey to Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse, and to a young shepherd boy named David, a boy whose songs would one day calm a tormented king and whose heart beat in perfect rhythm with God's own. The moment Samuel poured the anointing oil over David's head, the entire future of Israel shifted on its axis. This was the true meaning of the prophecy that had been growing in Samuel's spirit his whole life. It wasn't just a warning about kings, it was a promise. God was not merely building an earthly kingdom, he was laying the foundation for a lineage through which the Messiah, the true king, would one day come. The throne of David was never just about royal blood, it was about divine design. Samuel lived to see kings rise and fall, but his spiritual eyes saw far beyond any earthly crown. He saw the coming of one greater than David, one whose kingdom would have no end. His hidden prophecy was never truly about power. It was about redemption. When Samuel finally died, all of Israel mourned as if the voice of God had gone silent again. But the truth is, it had only shifted its form. The same Spirit that spoke to Samuel would later speak through the fire of other prophets, through the conviction of apostles, and finally through the life and words of the Son of God himself. And even today, that same voice still whispers. It doesn't always come in thunder or fire, but often in the quiet ache of a soul that finally longs to say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. We have many more stories of faith and prophecy to share. Until next time, stay curious and keep listening.